If you were to wander down the street in Canberra, Australia, you would find that it was just another normal street until you saw this house. It has a strange pattern in its garden and on its roof, which when observed from above reveals an incredibly strange message. So what does this bizarre pattern mean? To understand this strange secret, we need to start off with the basics. What is the name of this street? What could be so special about this street? Well, the street is called Garran, which is also the name of the suburb where the house is located. But if you look at the word Garran, it looks like a jumbled mess of letters. But it isn't. Each letter in the word Garran represents a number from 0 to 9. This is known as a letter-to-digit substitution cipher, where each letter of the alphabet is replaced by a number. G is equal to 7, A is equal to 1, R is equal to 3, and so on. And so the name of the street is actually a secret code. In fact, every street in this suburb uses this same cipher. So let's say you were walking around this neighborhood and you came across this house. If you were to do the same cipher on the address number, it would tell you that this house is number 24. Pretty cool, right? But you can probably already see where this is going. The pattern on the house and in the garden are using the same cipher to reveal a secret message. But what is that message? To get to the bottom of this mystery, we need to start with the garden. As you can see, there is a strange circular shape in the middle of the lawn with 4 lines extending outwards. There are 3 circles along each line, and these circles represent the letters O and 0. The other shape represents the number 1. We have already established that the letter A is equal to 1, and since this is the first circle along the line, it means that the first letter is A. The next 2 circles are Os, and since O is the 0, that means that the full message reads A-O-O-O-A. Now if you apply the letter-to-digit conversion to those letters, it reveals the coordinates 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. But what do these coordinates mean? Well, if you were to go north from this point, you would eventually reach a lake called Lake Burley Griffin. These coordinates are telling you to go 1 kilometer north, and then 0 kilometers east, which is essentially due north. It's telling you to go to this point on the lake. But why would the coordinates of a lake be hidden in someone's garden? Well, it's because this lake is hiding a secret. When viewed from space, you can see that the lake is shaped like a boomerang. But there's more to this lake than meets the eye. If you look closely, you can see that the lake contains a series of numbers. Some are obvious, like this one in the middle, which is a giant 0, while others are a bit more cryptic. These numbers are referring to the addresses of the houses surrounding the lake, but they're not referring to the actual addresses. Instead, they're using the same letter-to-digit substitution cipher to hide their true value. For example, this house is labeled with the number 1, but if you convert that letter to the corresponding number, you'll find that it is actually the address number 88. This house is labeled with the number 2, but that actually corresponds to the address number 11. And this house is labeled with the number 3, but that actually corresponds to the address number 4. And so on. So if you follow this logic and convert all of the numbers around the lake into their real values, you'll find that they correspond to the addresses of all of the houses on the street. Essentially, this lake is a giant map of all the houses in this suburb. But who decided to put this secret map here and why? Well, to answer that question, we need to look at the house with the weird pattern on its roof. And to decipher the message on the roof, we need to take a closer look at this window. If we look through the window, we can see that it's covered in paint, but we can still make out the faint outline of the window's glass panes. And when we line up the coordinates with the street, we find that they match perfectly. These coordinates lead us to this exact location. But why would someone cover up a window with paint? Well, the reason is pretty simple. The person living in this house didn't want anyone to know that they were there. But why would they want to do that? Well, it's because the owner of this house is someone very important. In fact, this house is the official residence of the Prime Minister of Australia. And as you may have guessed by now, the person living here is none other than the Prime Minister of Australia himself. So why did the Prime Minister decide to build his house in such a strange place? Well, when Canberra was being planned out, this area was meant to be a nature reserve. However, the government decided to move the Prime Minister's residence from Melbourne to Canberra, and so they built this house in a remote location away from the public eye. But over time, people started to move into the area, and so now the Prime Minister's house is surrounded by regular houses with regular people living in them. But even though the Prime Minister's house is surrounded by regular people, no one knows who lives here. That's because the street has some very strict rules. For starters, no one is allowed to walk on the nature strip in front of the Prime Minister's house. They have even gone as far as to plant bushes along the road to prevent anyone from being able to stand on the nature strip. And the Prime Minister's house has a security gate across the driveway, and that gate is never opened unless the Prime Minister himself is coming or going. But one thing I found quite strange was that no one seemed to know that the Prime Minister lived here. Most of the locals seemed very confused when I asked them whether the Prime Minister lived in the area. One lady even said, "Who's the Prime Minister?" while she was standing in front of her mailbox, which had the Prime Minister's address clearly written on it. Anyway, I ended up speaking to a man who lived on the same street as the Prime Minister, and he told me a few interesting facts about life on the street. For starters, everyone on the street gets a letterbox, but they don't get mail delivered to them. All of their mail is instead sent to a post office in the city center, where someone picks it up. He also told me that you can't sell your house. You can only lease it for a maximum of 5 years at a time. And that is because the government needs to be able to move the Prime Minister at a moment's notice should something happen to them. But probably the most interesting part is that you can't just drive up to the Prime Minister's house. Even if you're walking, you're not allowed to walk up to the house. You can only view the Prime Minister's house from this particular spot. Apparently, a family once tried to sneak up on the Prime Minister's house, and they got as far as the intersection before being confronted by security. The security guards told them that they weren't allowed to be here and escorted them away from the area. In the end, I left feeling very privileged that I got to see the Prime Minister's house. But I couldn't help but feel a little sad for the Prime Minister, too. Imagine being the Prime Minister of an entire country and not even being able to live in your own house. But hey, at least he's safe, and that's what matters most. Thanks for watching. See you next time.